This, above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow, as the night the day, thou canst not then be false to any man. William Shakespeare, Hamlet. Spider-Man, regardless of what version of the story you look at, is a story about a secret identity. Now, he is far from the only superhero to utilize this trope, but queer and trans people seem to often relate and identify with him in particular. This is most likely due to the costuming, which then brings forth the idea that it could be literally anyone of any race, gender, religion, etc. This specific concept was most famously brought to light in the 2018 film Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which follows not Peter Parker, but Miles Morales, an Afro-Latino high school boy. Beat by beat, his origin is the same one we've seen a million times before. High school boy gets bit by a radioactive spider, gets superpowers from it, and becomes New York's new superhero, Spider-Man. However, when things get really interesting is when we're introduced to other Spider-Men and women from other universes. What if Spider-Man was a girl? Or a pig? Or a mech? What if he was in a classic noir film? We even get another Peter Parker. Truly, anyone can be behind a mask. It's the concept we already had in the back of our minds with this character, but now it's even more explicitly clear. Skip ahead to the year of 2023, and we're gifted with the second film of the planned trilogy, entitled Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And here is where I will issue the first and final spoiler warning for this video. If you don't want spoilers for Across the Spider-Verse, do not watch this video. With this film came even more spider heroes, like hundreds, maybe even thousands of them, and this further drives the point home. What if he was an anarchist, or Indian? What if we had a spider that was disabled, or one that's assumed to be mother? What if we had a Spider-Man with a completely different source for his powers? This movie, even more than the first, really wants you to know that literally anybody could be behind a mask, and so it's only fitting that this movie would also contain one of the clearer queer allegories in the franchise. Now, for those who have seen the movie more than once, were just particularly observant, or went on Twitter after the movie dropped, you may have seen the title and thought that this video would be about the sort of transcoding with Gwen. And while I do think that is an interesting topic that I may go into in a later video if there's interest for that, that's not what I'm talking about today. No, I am far more interested in looking at the far more obvious yet far more under-discussed queer allegory that can be found from Miles in this film. Because at heart, below the drama with the Spider Society and the logistics of canon events and the universe hopping and the betrayals, we have a story about the anxiety of coming out. So let's talk about it. About 20 minutes into the film, we get a reintroductory monologue from Miles, quickly re-explaining his origin story for those who either didn't see the first movie or just need a refresher, and it quickly becomes obvious that the secret part of being Spider-Man is causing him a fair amount of stress.
I mean, would they get it if I told them?
We love you and accept you even though you have been lying to us for a year.
Maybe in some other universe.
Now let me jump in real quick here to state explicitly that I'm not saying Miles is queer, and unlike Nimona, I'm not even sure that this was intentional. However, this is one of the many things that this storyline could read as an allegory for, and it's how I read it, so I'm going to continue on making my point. But just know that I do not claim to know whether or not this was intentional, and either way, an allegory does not equate to actual representation. Anyways, the secret of his continues to cause him problems throughout the first hour of the film. He's having a hard time balancing his life as Miles and his life as Spider-Man, and the fact that he can't talk to his family about it is making it worse. His parents, or at least his mom, know that something is up, but they don't know what that something is.
He's lying to you.
Jeff?
Your son. He's lying. And I think you know it.
This eventually leads to an argument that leads to Miles being grounded. It is while he is frustratedly lying down in his room that Gwen returns, being the first time either of them have seen each other in a few years. Now, I know I said I wouldn't go into the stuff with Gwen in this video, but it is important to note that this allegory does also extend to her, and more importantly, her dad had a really bad reaction when he found out that she was the Spider-Woman of their universe. I'm bringing this up because it's important context for the conversation Miles and Gwen have about the topic of disclosure when it comes to their secret identities. Because she had a bad experience, she urges Miles not to tell his family because it will go poorly.
I mean, my parents... maybe if I told them...
Don't.
Trust me.
This is very true to real life, and is a complicated issue that many queer people are faced with, discerning whether or not it will be even safe to come out. The idealized version that certain queer people spout off is that coming out is good for you. It's freeing, and sure, maybe it'll be hard in the beginning, but it's worth it. And while that is true for many queer people, that's not the case for everyone. It's simply not safe for many queer people to be who they are. There are countless cases of kids and teenagers getting murdered for it. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of issue, and that's an interesting thing to see addressed in a Spider-Man movie. Moving on, before the real adventure of the movie starts, Miles has this moment where he almost tells his mom the truth, but then he decides against it at the last second.
I'm sorry I was late.
You can see the hope in his mom's face, and then the disappointment, but she doesn't ridicule or punish him for it. In fact, she even gives him permission to go out with Gwen and a little speech about her love for him, even though he's still grounded.
Wherever you go from here, you have to promise to take care of that little boy for me. Make sure he never forgets where he came from. He never doubts that he is loved, and he never lets anyone at those big fancy places he's gonna be in tell him that he doesn't belong there.
This is where we stop off for the first half of the movie. After this, he goes off, meets the Spider Society, and the rest of the movie revolves around that. So, the allegory is done then, right? He doesn't see his parents again, so we're done for now, and it'll pick back up in Beyond the Spider-Verse. Well, no. If that were the case, I would have waited to do this video. Once we get to the Spider Society, it seems perfect at first, but it soon becomes evident that something isn't quite right. In theory, this would be perfect for someone like Miles, who just wants to be with people like him. However, it soon becomes clear that there's further marginalization even within this society, something that Hobie, the aforementioned anarchist Spider-Man, warns him about, but Miles doesn't truly get until he's right in the middle of it.
It's propaganda, bro. To distract you from the truth.
Many quote-unquote queer-friendly spaces are only friendly to certain kinds of queer people. It's the difference between being the only trans person in a room of cis queer people, or being the only person of color, or the only disabled one. As much as, ideally, queer spaces would be for all queer people, this simply isn't true in practice, and it's an issue that comes up especially around the Pride celebrations of June. It's a complicated issue that I'm neither qualified to nor interested in going far more in-depth through in this video, but marginalization and discrimination within marginalized communities is extremely common, and what happens to Miles in the Spider Society reads as a very clear example of that, especially when you remember back to what his mom said earlier.
And he never lets anyone tell him that he doesn't belong there.
You don't belong here. You never did.
Where this allegory actually leaves off for the film comes in the last 20 minutes, when Miles finally, for all intents and purposes, comes out to his mom. Or, at least, who he thought was his mom. Unfortunately for him, due to universe-hopping shenanigans, this is actually the mom of a different Miles Morales. But he nonetheless reached the conclusion of his arc, deciding that it was worth it to tell his mom the truth about who he is.
I'm Spider-Man.
Now, where this storyline will pick up in Beyond the Spider-Verse, I have no idea, but if I had to guess, I would imagine it would end with him telling his real family the truth and continuing on as Spider-Man with their support. That's the hope, at least. What did you get from this storyline in the movie? Did you get a different reading out of it? Would you be interested in a video focused on Gwen's side of things that I didn't really talk about in this video? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and consider subscribing if you want to see more videos like this. Have a nice day, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye!